Welcome to Emotional Savvy, the Relationship Help Show. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. If you're ready to increase your confidence in conversations and conflict, deepen your self-awareness, expand your connectedness, and enrich your relationship with yourself and other humans you care about, and even those you wish you didn't, you're in the right place. Enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome to this episode. I'm delighted that you're here because we're going to talk about something that we haven't spoken about before, and that are the differences between men and women's brains, and also between the way men and women are perceived in the world and are perceiving the world. My guest today is Manni. We're going to be talking with him later. He is the podcast host of Guys Radio, and he's written a book about differences in guys' perception of things. Interesting interview. I'm sure you're going to want to hear every word of it. But I wanted to start today by talking a little bit about the actual research, what's really going on in the differences between men's and women's brains. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, and I know that you know that, but I just want to say I've done a lot of research into this. I don't do the original research, but I have done a lot of research in my time learning about these things. So I wanted to share the most recent things with you because you can go online and you can find out. Some people will say, oh, there really are no differences. But the information that I'm bringing to you today is the most recent information from Stanford University, and I think that's a very, very reliable source. So when we're talking with Manni, we're going to be talking about things cultural, the way things are in the world, what's happening in the news, how Me Too and all has affected this, and definitely that's things that are pertinent to emotional savvy. So we definitely want to be talking about this, and we want to be talking about contemporary men and what's going on, and some of the things that have been said recently, and the effects, as I said, of the Me Too movement. So this is an exciting show. It makes a difference for us to understand these things. So I just want to talk about the research a little bit. The findings have all been replicated in these studies, and therefore I think we can consider them all to be factual. And they have been reported in different studies to get the same results, not replicating the same study, but looking at the same things with other studies and getting the same results. So let's just think of a few things that are a little bit different between men and women's brains, because we know that there are behavioral differences between men and women in how they manage life and what they do and think, and how they manage relationships, which is really pertinent to emotional savvy. So here's some findings. This is all brain research, neuroscientific research. Women excel in several measures of verbal ability, pretty much all of them, except for verbal analogies. Women's reading comprehension and writing ability consistently exceeds that of men on average. Reading comprehension, and writing ability exceeds that of men. They outperform men in tests of fine motor coordination and perceptual speed, and they're more adept at retrieving information from long-term memory. So I was speaking with a client this morning, and he says, my wife remembers everything. Every single fight, everything that was said, everything that goes on. Well, there's a reason for that. And I was telling him that. And I was kind of laughing as I was preparing for today's show, because that's exactly what we're talking about. There are actual brain studies that show that women are more adept at retrieving information from long-term memory. Now, men on average, kind of interesting, can more easily juggle items in working memory. They have superior visuospatial skills. So they're better at visualizing what happens when a complicated 2 or 3 dimensional shape is rotated in space. That kind of thing. They deal with that better. And so we begin to see how people can be attracted in certain ways to different kinds of careers and different interests by the way their brains are actually created. And in the way of behavioral tendencies, women are twice as likely as men to experience clinical depression in their lifetime, twice as likely. And likewise for post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, we don't often think of women having PTSD, but now that the research shows us, think about it, women are much more likely to have clinical depression, twice as likely, and the same, twice as likely to have PTSD. And much of that goes undiagnosed, particularly when there's been emotional and verbal violence in the home, not to mention sexual and physical abuse. And so that's a really big finding, that women are most likely to have PTSD, more likely than men, twice as likely. And how many times is it actually found to be the case or diagnosed in women? It's certainly not as frequent as it is with men, because we think about men having war situations, women have them too, but many times we don't recognize as women, and I'm speaking for women in this case, women don't recognize that they've actually had PTSD as readily. And if you've been with a hijackal, whether you're male or female, women will be more likely to get what's called C, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of that. And men will get it as well if they've had a hijackal experience with their partner. So some very, very big things there. So men are twice as likely to become alcoholic or drug dependent than women. And men are 40% more likely to develop schizophrenia. Wow. Okay, women are more likely to be depressed. Men are more likely to become alcoholic or drug dependent or have a tendency towards schizophrenia. And boys' dyslexia rate, this was startling. Boys' dyslexia rate is perhaps 10 times that of girls, and boys are 4 or 5 times as likely to be diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So these are some significant things, and they have real impact as the brain gets older. Because as we've spoken of on the program, the brain continues to grow until we're 25 to come into its final shape. And so many, many factors engage with these differences in the brain. So brain imaging studies indicate that there are definitely differences that are adjusted for total brain size. So men's brains are bigger than women's, but a woman's hippocampus, which is critical to learning and memorization, is larger than a man's, but it works differently. And conversely, a man's amygdala, which is associated with experiencing emotions and collection of experience, a man's amygdala is bigger than a woman's, but it too works differently than women's. So, just so many things that just perceiving the world, the way we go around in the world, the way that our brain takes in information and knows what to do with it, makes a huge difference when we're looking at how we perceive things that go on in relationships. So, there's a few discoveries that should kind of wake us up. Women, it's known, retain stronger, more vivid memories of emotional events than men do, and they recall emotional memories more quickly, and the ones they recall are richer and more intense. So like my client this morning, he was saying his wife remembers everything that had a high emotional value, every fight, every distress that they had. So that's important to recognize that could be going on. And when you form an intimate relationship, an emotionally intimate relationship, and you know these things, wouldn't it be wise to start putting your heads together and realize that when each of you express what's going on for you, each of you comes to the table with different functions, different perceptions, that you would have a richer, clearer vision of what's going on if you would communicate well. I think these things are extremely important, and I know that my guest has a lot to say about that. So we're going to move on to the interview portion. You know, if you want to talk with me more about what's going on in your life or your relationship, remember you can do that at forrelationshiphelp.com, F-O-R, relationship, H-E-L-P.com. And if you're looking for support, you'd like to be part of my membership program, you'll find that at forrelationshiphelp.com/circles. Don't be worried. The discussion forums and everything that keep you safely off social media but work in the same way as social media, they're available to you, plus my 21 Steps to Empowered Emotional Savvy Home Study program brought to you through email for 47 days. Those things are available for $5 a month. So I'm not talking about a lot, but it's what it costs to keep the website up and running and make sure everything is safe for you. So without further ado, let's move on and talk to our guest today, Robert Manni from New York. And I will introduce him more fully in the next segment. Until we talk, please visit my YouTube channel. Know that on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific time, every week we have a program that I produce called The Doctor Is In. Love to have you there. You can type to me your questions and I'll answer them. So go to YouTube. The channel is called For Relationship Help. And look for The Doctor Is In on Monday evenings at 6 p.m. So much to talk about. I think you're going to really enjoy today's show. So let's proceed. Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm excited that you're here. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. There's lots for you here. Look back at past episodes. If you've been with me for a while, I'm so glad you're back. It means you're finding value, and I hope you'll share it with your friends because they might need this value too. Today, I'm excited to have a colleague of mine from yourtango.com, and his name is Robert Manni. Welcome to the program, Robert.
Welcome, Rhoberta. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, I'm excited that you're here. It's always fun when I can interview a colleague in a different format, as opposed to being another person who is working in mental health services, but to working with somebody who's a colleague on another platform. So you can find Robert and I at yourtango.com, where we're both relationship experts featured there. And he has a very interesting perspective because he has a podcast and it's called Guys Guy Radio. I got big questions about that. I bet you have too. So let me tell you a little bit about Robert. He is the host of Guys Guys Radio. He's featured on Blog Talk Radio and, of course, available wherever you love to get your podcast. So remember the name of the show, Guys Guy Radio. And this weekly podcast features relationship coaches, entertainers, authors, wellness experts, spiritual teachers, sports personalities, anybody who's really interested in him and his topics and guys topics. So that makes sense, doesn't it? You can find him at robertmanni.com, Robert, MANNI.com. And he has a syndicated blog, and it's called On Life, Love, and the Pursuit of Happiness. He's well respected in the field and has appeared in many, many places. So you're going to want to follow up on Robert. So go to robertmanni.com, robertmanni.com. And so let's talk a little bit about the thing that's on the top of my mind, and it might be on the top of everyone else's too, is how is a guy's guy different from a guy?
Okay. Well, a guy's guy is really an updated version of a man's man, but in the best sense of the word. It's not like a macho man and the woman's in the kitchen and the bedroom. It's much different than that. It's about being today's contemporary man, being casually confident, having strength, but an unassuming strength, seductive type of integrity. Integrity is very important. Emotional intelligence, style, have timeless style, and also be open to have a lot of fun. So it's a guy who's comfortable in his own skin, the type of guy that other guys like and want to hang with, and also that women like and respect.
Okay, and how about the other side of that equation? Kind of guy that women like and women respect, but is a guy's guy, a guy who really understands how to be in a great relationship with women?
Well, I think a guy's guy would be open to learning, always open to learning more and more. He's not an expert, but he's a student, as we all are.
Mm-hmm. So I hear you talking about a fellow who's open and he's not stuck in some behavior patterns or expectations, but is willing to have an open mind and an open heart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's interested in many, many topics. He's not just caught up in the football and cars paradigm.
Right.
Right. So he has a whole lot that he is intrigued about and willing to learn about. So I love that definition, Robert. What led you to talk about that?
I just have felt, and it was a kind of an inspiration for my novel, The Guy's Guide to Love, and I know we'll get into that, but I just saw that there was a chasm. My background is in advertising and marketing, in the advertising business and media. You see a lot of kind of leading edge what's going on out there socially and culturally, and I just found that there was a chasm, a growing chasm in communication between men and women, where women have been on a straight line, a straight trajectory to finally getting long overdue recognition for all the wonderful things they've been doing. And meanwhile, for guys, they're at a little bit of a crossroads because although, in my opinion, it's never been a better time to be a man because this is a time where men can be anything they want to be. It's also a time where it's never been less clear who men really are.
Mm. That's fascinating because we're kind of looking at extremes often. People are drawing us to the extremes, you know. Like I think this whole thing that we just went through without mentioning any names, that the Me Too movement and Time's Up and things is some kind of assault on men now. What do you think about that?
Oh, I don't think it's an assault by any means. And I think, you know, listen, human nature is some people are going to pile on and they're going to take out some women will take out some of their frustrations and say, okay, now it's our turn to really lay it onto the guys. And fine, if you're a man, what you need to do right now, in my opinion, is to listen, because these are things that have been happening for too long. And if you're a real man and you're a guy's guy and you're authentic and you're doing the right thing and you're respectful to women, respectful to yourself and to others, you have nothing to really worry about. Now, of course, people get accused sometimes of doing things that they haven't done from both sides. So, you know, you're not going to be just somebody to get walked over. You have to stand up for your rights. However, let's face it, women have not been treated fairly over the years. They're getting recognition now. It's a great thing. And as I keep saying, it's never been a better time to be a man. If you're a good man, it's never been a better time because women are there to partner with you. They can take a lot of the stress and pressure off you. They can do most of the things that men do, or men usually have been put on men to do. Of course, they're as capable as men in every way, but they're now taking on a lot of the traditional roles that men have had in the past. I know for myself. I went from president of an ad agency, and now my wife's working full time. I'm building my own brand, but I take my son, he's 5. I take him to school in the morning at 8 o'clock. I pick him up at 5:30. And it's been a blessing to go from the top of the corporate world to a different type of lifestyle where I have a 5-year-old being my greatest teacher now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that you probably would agree that you are more actively sharing in life together with your partner, because their separation of roles is beginning to have so much crossover. So you can have a delightful time engaging with your son, and you can have the life that you want, and she can do what it suits best for the family and her too. So nobody has to suffer. We can create things. One of the things I say so frequently, Robert, is that there are 3 hallmarks of a healthy relationship, any relationship, whether it's our romantic one, our one with our parents, our one at work with friends. If your relationship doesn't have equality, reciprocity, and mutuality, it's not going to go anywhere good for very long.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's well stated.
So I think that's what you're discussing is, hey, there's this whole world of possibilities now because of this time that we're at in our history and in our current events that says, all right, we're all fully functioning, capable adults. Well, at least we hope we are. And that we can emotionally shift and have greater EQ if we want to. And in the doing of that, we can reconstruct our relationships or reconfigure them or at least rethink them to get that equality, reciprocity, and mutuality.
Yeah. Every situation is different. And I think that's something that we all need to be aware of. But again, today's the type of time where men can be whoever they want to be. There's never been a better time for that. And yet it's never been more unclear as to who they are. So in my particular situation, and every relationship is different. My wife would rather that I was out there still working and she was at home with our kid. And that's okay. But what we've done is she's supported me. You want to follow this dream, you go for it. She's got 2 masters. She's got a great career. She said, I'll do this. And I socked a lot of money away from my career. And so we're taking a chance on doing it. And sometimes there's always going to be some disagreements or whose role is this or whose role is that. But you have to be, I think the key word is open and to realize that, okay, just because you used to do things one way doesn't mean you always have to do things the exact same way. And, it's interesting. I'll go to some of the events, like they'll say, okay, come to school. And then there's going to be a little celebration for Thanksgiving. And you stay there for an extra hour and people have coffee and stuff. Well, 30% of the parents there are guys now, and I don't think that was the case probably even 20 years ago. And I always thought like, oh, I'll be real popular because I'm a guy doing this. No, it's not like that at all. It's just like anything else. It is what it is. You just show up. There's people, and you do your thing, and you make your connections. And everybody has a different life, and we have to be fluid nowadays. And you have to be respectful of your partner, and just have a grasp on what the goal is, how you can provide the best life for each other, and also if you have children. So that's what we're doing. Forgive the ambulance in the background. I live in New York City, and we get that quite frequently when you're in a path to one of the big hospitals.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of things you have to get used to when you live in that city. Even the dogs, I was kind of shocked the way they handle dogs on sidewalks in New York. So no problem with the ambulance. But I want to go back and revisit a little piece that you said about your wife kind of in passing, that she didn't really want to go out in the world, but she was willing to support you. For those people who have those difficult conversations, either they're having them now or they're coming up, how long did it take you to going back and forth and making the best decision for your family and your relationship at this time?
Well, I've always, when we got together, I was president of an ad agency. And since then, I've been doing different business jobs in my traditional role. But recently, I've decided I want to follow something all the way. And she's been working the whole time. And she's kind of worked her way up the food chain at the Department of Education. So she's got a good career, and she just needs to put a little bit more time in there. So we're okay for right now. Long term, she has other goals and aspirations, but she's not. She's working towards them. Everything's cool. We haven't had money issues, which can change things drastically. Fortunately, I was smart when I was working corporately, and so I've had the opportunity to do this. Additionally, about 4 years ago, I had a surprise diagnosis where I was out running and I had to come home, and I had unbelievable pain in my side, and I went in and I got kind of checked out, and I had a kidney stone, but I also had a growth in each kidney. And, I had to go into robotic surgery. So it changed my life in that something that who thinks about their kidneys? Like nobody. And then I had to, for the first time in my life, stare into the abyss and not know what would happen. And that kind of put me on a different path and reassessing what was important, what was not as important. And I actually feel my corporate career made me get sick because it was so stressful and toxic.
Oh, I absolutely would agree with you, Robert. I used to own a holistic health and yoga retreat where I had my private practice as well with my clients. And that connection, that mind-body connection is so powerful. And when you're putting your body on hold all the time in order to do something else or to jump to somebody else's needs or wants or the demand of the market, you get further and further on the back burner. And finally, your body says, hey, listen here. And then it may be a long recovery, which it wouldn't have been if you'd noticed what were the prevailing factors that were leading you in that direction.
I had a chance to do a lot of self-assessment. I went through Ayurvedic protocols also, as well as Western. My wife she's a yoga teacher. She teaches yoga teachers. And so she has the right mindset for me, and she's been a great teacher for me. Now we both take spiritual unfoldment classes. We do a lot of things to work on ourselves. I interview all these wonderful people. I can't wait to interview you on my show. And a lot of people think, oh, Guys Radio is going to be, football and beer and babes. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things, let me tell you. But it's much more than that, because I believe nowadays that there's so much seeking going on, where there's a lot of people, particularly boomers, who are asking themselves, is there more than this? What else can I do? What else do I need to know about? Is it just the paycheck and the mortgage and the taxes, and then I burn out and then they kick me out the door and pay somebody half as much who's half my age? And I see a lot of people going through that now. And fortunately, I was ahead of the curve, and now I'm in much better shape and a much better person, having gone through this kind of journey of 5 years it's been now. And and I'm just getting started. I never have felt better, and I've never been healthier either.
No, well, a wake-up call when it comes early is such a blessing. Yes. And sometimes we don't realize what a blessing it is because it seems to be interrupting our flow. But that's the exact reason why it is a good idea, and it is a blessing. I studied Ayurveda for a very long time, so I'm really happy to hear that. I'm a yoga ceremony in the Shivananda tradition, and I've been doing yoga for 50 years. Wow. So, yeah. I started very young. It was very, very interesting to me, and always has been. And all aspects of yoga. While we're talking about yoga, let's everybody realize that going to yoga class is hatha yoga. It's only one of the 8 paths. Yeah, that's one of the 8 paths of Raja Yoga. But we need the meditation, we need the pranayama, the breathing, we need the concentration, we need all of those parts. And when you actually understand how that allows you to have a full, rich life, taking care of all the elements in your life, then Ayurveda and Ayurvedic ideas really resonate with you. So I'm happy to hear about that. Maybe we could talk about that sometime too. But, having a moment where the universe hits you up the side of the head with the 2x4 and says, hey, pay attention. The path you're on may not be the best for you. Yes. Is a blessing. And
I was laying on the floor. I remember I was 4th of July weekend. I was in more pain than I've ever been in my entire life. And I was staring out my corner of my eye, and I saw my son. He was 1 year old at the time. And I told my wife, take him for a walk or something. I don't want him to see me like this. And I decided at that point that things were going to change, and they did.
Yeah, well, that was very, very wise of you in the moment, too, because it's not we want to protect our children from things, but at different levels of brain development, children take things in differently, yes. And things can scare them. And so your mortality, or you're not being the person who allows them to survive, is something that scares little children. So that was very conscious of you to do that. Yeah, I bet. For sure. So once you began the journey of recovery and you recognized that maybe your calling was different than you thought, what happened to you and your colleagues from the ad agency? What kinds of perceptions changed, or how did your relationships change, if they did at all?
That's a great question. I was actually thinking about that. I have found that I've drifted further and further away. I was pursuing some other opportunities in advertising, and then I decided I don't want to be in this business right now. And something came to me where there's an equity position in manufacturing, making a product. I'm talking to some people there now. And actually, as recently as yesterday, we'd been negotiating for a couple of years. They said, you can have the whole project. You fit it the way you want. And it would be a commodity type of product that could be fantastic. So by kind of letting go and taking the chance, wonderful opportunities have come about. And the same thing with my podcast. We were talking earlier before the show. I had a healer who worked with me through Skype and did a wonderful job. And I had, when I got better from one thing, my doctor said, "Oh, but look at your PSA number. Now it's spiked up. You could have a problem there." And I said, "I don't have a problem there." He's like, "How do you know?" I said, "I just know." And I went and I worked with this healer who was a guest on my show. And I went back and I had a test done, and my numbers were 400% lower. 400%. So what's happened, to answer your question, forgive me for kind of going off the path a little bit, I've found myself distancing myself, not intentionally, just when I'm with people who are from the ad business and friends, because I still stay in a fantasy football league. I see their level of anxiety. I feel their level of anxiety. They're not sure what to make of me. At first, they would challenge me and they say, "Oh, guy's guy. A guy's guy wouldn't do that. A man's man wouldn't do that." And now, after it's a couple of years now, they don't say anything. I know that they see that what I'm doing is something I believe in. And when you do things that you believe in, people can pick up on that. So,
and do they envy you? Sorry, do they envy you?
I have no idea. I mean, some of them, one was like, "Well, you're not in advertising anymore, so what do you care who cares what you think about that?" So you're going to get a little bit of everything. And I can't use my psychic energy being concerned about what they think of me, but I can only perceive what I'm picking up from what I feel. And I actually feel the last time I got together with a bunch of guys for our season this year, I actually felt it was very different. The vibe was good.
Oh, good. How about women in advertising? Did they understand it better?
Yes, absolutely. They are, it's a business where, you want to ride the hot horse. And if you're not the hot horse, you get forgotten very quickly, because it's such a fast-paced business that people don't have time for you, basically. And it's not them like not liking you. It's just they're so busy and there's so many details going on in their mind that they just have to keep going. And I totally respect that. I don't expect them to go out of their way for me. But the women, of course, have been a lot more, they haven't been questioning or challenging or anything like that.
No, they get it, I'm sure. Yeah, I know that a little bit about that world that you were in, because I was acting general manager of a media company down in Tribeca. Okay. And so I do know. I do know. Pardon? Yes, it was quite something. All right, so let's talk about your book. It's a novel, and it's called The Guy's Guide to Love. So that's kind of fun. What caused you to do this, and why is it called The Men's Side of Sex and the City?
Well, okay, so I was inspired to write the book because I noticed that it was my second attempt at a novel. The first one I wrote about a startup, and people read it, said, "Oh, that's you." And I'm like, okay, I better write another book. So I wrote another one, and this one I put myself in third person, and I divided myself into 3 characters, and then use composites of other people for the characters. And I wanted to really show women, give them a peek under the tent as to the world of men that they don't see. And the bottom line is, it's not that bad. And I think I wanted women to be able to see that there is another side to guys, but guys roll a different way. My 2 guys, that's like Sex in the City, because it's about 2 guys competing for love, sex, power, and money in advertising, but it's not 4 guys going out for cosmopolitans, because that's not how guys roll. Most men are lone wolves and kind of do their own thing, and they get together with their friends, but unless it's something extreme, they don't share that much about their feelings. If they're going to get a divorce, yes. If they got fired from their job, yes. If they're going to buy a house, yes. But milestone events. Otherwise, there's not too much sharing. You go to a bar, you drink your beer, you look up at the screen for the score of the game, whatever, and you keep chatting about different things. But it's a little bit different than the 4 ladies from Sex and the City. Dan Wakefield, who wrote the book New York in the 50s, and also Starting Over, which became a movie with Candace Bergen and Burt Reynolds, he's the one who called my book The Male Sex in the City.
Yeah.
Like anything in life, if you reach out to people, many times you're surprised. I sent them a copy of my manuscript. I said, I love your work, because Starting Over was one of my favorite books. And he was very appreciative, and is such a gentleman. And he said, I'm going to read your book. And then he wrote back, he said, I'm going to give you a blurb before the book was even published. And so I was thrilled by that, and I took that as a good sign.
Oh, I think it is a very good sign. First of all, that the way that you worded your letter probably captured the attention and good intentions, and that engaged them down enough to want to respond in such a positive way. I like the featured login that you have, the log line, as you call it, to the book. The Guy's Guide to Love, an honest but ambitious and executive discovers corruption is the key to success and embarks on a quote-unquote dishonesty safari to learn how to lie, cheat, and scheme his way to love and money. Wow, that sounds pretty hijackally.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot to talk about when we talk about things on your show, because anybody who's going to lie, cheat, and scheme their way to love and money is definitely on the path to becoming or behaving like a hijackal if they're not one. Right. So that'll be a great interest. So I'll have to read your book, Robert, so that we can.
Send you a copy.
Thank you so much. I love that. So this is exciting. It's exciting on many fronts, because I think you're a forerunner describing how things have changed and how things are changing, and helping people be open to that change, particularly men, but men and women. Because we need to know men are changing. We need to know what it looks like and sounds like and seems like from the male side of things, because we're a little more outspoken about how it's changing from our side of things. And we're much more readily going to talk about our feelings about things. So we need that information from your side. So I think that's fascinating. And as a blogger, you've got so much. Of course, what a great line on love, and the pursuit of happiness. Just can't imagine where you got that idea from. And you've really been quite successful with that, appearing on NBC and in different places across the media world. How are people receiving this information in light of what I was just saying?
Well, it's interesting because the book is called The Guy's Guide to Love, and it's really, that's the title of a column that the main character in the book writes about.
Ah, okay.
It's called The Guy's Guide to Love. So within the book, there's 7 columns that he writes, and he goes through this arc of kind of, he doesn't want to write the book. He decides write the column. He decides he writes the column because he has a friend who's a womanizer, kind of a likable womanizer who oversteps his boundaries and needs to find his comeuppances. He decides, I'm going to write the column about him. So he starts writing his column, The Guy's Guide to Love, and then the roles reverse, and you see the different sides of men. And so I started writing from my website a blog on life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, because I want to write about relationships and kind of write about some of the issues from the book. But also I want to expand beyond dating, because not that there's anything wrong with that being a specialty. I didn't think that was my real specialty. So I want to expand it to have some experiential things there, and also be able to, I'll put quote, guide or teach or advise. I think our very special millennial generation has often been misrepresented and have been unfortunately blamed for things that weren't of their doing. They're being giving blame for a world that they did not create. They didn't give themselves participation trophies. We did. So I wanted to put something out there for them. So what happened was life started to imitate art. And then from there, I developed Guys Radio, and I started interviewing basically just relationship experts. And then we expanded that because I started getting publicists sending me wellness experts, entertainment people, spiritual people, channelers, psychics, wellness experts. And so I just kept going, figured, you know what, this whole thing, the blog, the podcast, the movement, it's all to help seekers, to put things in front of people that they don't have time on their own to look for. And then they can decide, hey, I agree with this. I don't agree with that. I'm going to put this into my, daily routine, or I'm going to stop doing this, or whatever. So it's just to help people.
I love that. And as I said earlier, I think it's very proactive, very timely, very important to have right now. So people can go and listen to Robert's show. I mean, absolutely make sure you go there. You want to go to the Guys Guy Radio. And will they find the link to that on your website, Robert?
Yeah, and there's a link to all the podcasts. There's 333 podcasts. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Blog Talk Radio.
Right. And remember that I've already given you the URL, but be sure that you take note of it. RobertManni.com, Robert, MANNI.com. There, he has a blog. You want to definitely be looking at the blog. Kind of fascinated. Are you going to play the Carrie Bradshaw character if this becomes a screenplay?
You know what? None of the characters are really. I do have a screenplay. The log line you read, Rhoberta, is from the screenplay. And I've been out in LA pitching. I have a TV series also because a lot of people said, this book makes for good TV. I'm in touch with some of the companies. So we'll see.
Okay, great. So I have a big question for you to end our time together today, Robert. Maybe we'll talk again. And that question is, what do you think the most important thing or things that women need to know that men now know that you want women to know about?
Give me that again.
What do you want women to realize that men are thinking about that they may not realize men are thinking about right now?
I think men actually want women to win, and we want to be partners, and most men are looking for a relationship. They just don't know how to articulate that from verbally or by their behavior. But ultimately, there's a lot of comfort for men in having a one-on-one relationship. They know that it allows them to grow. There's a trust level there that's really good. You can be more intimate going out with one woman than you can be going out with 10 women if you do it if you have the right woman. So I think women need to know that men are really, put the bravado aside, put the sometimes arrogance aside. There's a little boy behind there who really wants to have fun and be your friend. Beautifully
said. I can't add anything to that except that you definitely want to be listening to Robert. You see, he's got insight. So thank you for being with me, Robert.
Thank you, Doctor.
And remember, everybody, RobertManni.com, Robert, MANNI.com. Listen to his podcast, Guys Guy Radio. Read his novel, Guys Guide to Love. It's so hard to say, but so worthwhile. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. You can always find me at FOR relationshiphelp.com. And I'm so glad that you're here. I hope you'll join me next time. Always interesting guests. And we'll talk soon. Take good care. Thanks for being here for today's episode of Emotional Savvy. If you want to deepen your emotional savvy, make shifts in your relationships, and enjoy life and relationships more, work with me, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Get my books, enjoy my courses, or work with me directly. You can do that by visiting FOR relationshiphelp.com, FOR relationshiphelp.com, and subscribe to Tips for Relationships now. Don't miss a thing. Be empowered this week with more emotional savvy.